track saws. Before we get into it though, I want to say huge thanks to Shay. Thank you for your donation. It's awesome, just blowing my mind every time. And thanks for sticking around, waiting for us to get set up here. If you're watching us, we're live. And if you're watching us later on the replay, then that's the replay. So I know I've done Festool reviews before. This is just sort of an overview, kind of my thoughts and opinions on these three saws and a couple others and why I went with these three saws. Tiffany's having some technical difficulties in the back. You just have to mute it, babe.
Okay.
All right. So yeah, I'm going to show you a little tip that I use. A lot of guys know this already, but I'll show you a little tip in a bit. And at the end, you guys can ask me questions. We can chat back and forth. I can show you other tools or whatever you want. And Tiffany is going to be sort of running the camera as well as some of the questions if you guys have any. So if I don't answer them right away, it's because I can't see them yet. So let's get into it. All right, so we have the Makita corded track saw. We've got the FlexVolt Dewalt track saw, and we've got a TS55, I believe that's what it's called. Yeah, Festool track saw corded. These, for me, I mean, I have too many track saws, clearly, right? One guy doesn't need three track saws, but I do. So let's sort of start where I started. I first bought the Festool track saw. Now, the reason I did that is because I had this Festool MFT table, and the two work really, really well together. I bought them at the same time, and it's just such an amazing saw for finishing. I'm going to kind of go over some of the details here as well. Then I bought this Dewalt track saw primarily because it's cordless, because I'm on the Dewalt platform and it's just awesome. So I was using this for some tricky framing work, and then I use it also for some, quick finishing, and I primarily use this saw right now for decking. The next saw is this Makita. Now, this is a really good saw too. I only use this saw for cement work. When I say cement work, I mean like hardy board, things like that, siding. This works really, really well. The reason I'm only using this for cement board is because, you get all that silica dust up in there, and it just starts to build up, and I really didn't want to dirty up these two saws. These are only for like wood and composites. Now, there's a lot to go over on each saw, and I could do a ton of demos. So we are going to do some cutting. I don't think I'm going to go into every single little detail about them. I'm not going to talk about RPMs. I'm not going to talk about, which one's best for, well, yes, I am. I'm just going to talk. Let's just do that. All right. With the Festool, basically the way it works is anything green on a Festool tool does something. And so let's just talk about what this saw can do. On the front here, you can go from 0 to 45 degrees, but you can actually tip it and go -1 degree. And that's by flipping this little green lever here on the front. So you can actually tip it -1 degree, and you can go all the way to 47 degrees if you need. So that's pretty awesome. And that's just done by loosening the front knob and the back knob. All right. And then if you want to go to, if you want to go to -1, you pull this green lever and you can go to -1 degree. So it's really, really handy if you've got some back beveling to do. Really cool feature. Right here on the front, this for me is a really, really nice adjustment for your depth of cut. Okay, it's got micro adjustment on it. I personally feel like this is the best one out of the three for just overall build quality and ease of use and micro adjusting. I really, really do like this. And when you're using a track saw for fine finishing, sometimes you need to be able to just dial that right in, right? So then to change the blade on this is pretty easy. It's got a lock in the handle right up here, and that just maneuvers this little pin. So when we get it sort of set down, then we can lock this handle in place. Now the blade is sort of locked down, and you can get to it with the onboard Allen key and pull this blade right out. Okay, so, and then you just pop that back. Now this right here, I love this feature. You can get a clear version for this. This is like an anti-chip, and it also helps keep the dust kind of contained in the system. So this is a really cool thing to have. I'm going to show you a little bit about this once we set up the track. I'm just going to ask Tiffany, can you see everything like fairly close?
It all looks great.
Okay.
I can come up a bit closer actually. Do you want me to get closer?
Well, I'm talking about the details, so I just want to make sure everyone can kind of see what I'm talking about. Just maybe, yeah, whatever. Okay. So then the Dewalt is a great saw. This particular model of mine, I've been having a few issues with it over the years where when I plunge down, it's been making this clicking noise. And today, for the first time in 2 years, I fixed it. I don't know what I did, but I fixed it. I took apart, because I've talked to some other guys that have had the same issue. I pulled these 4 screws and took this plate right off. Okay, and then the clicking has something to do with the locking mechanism here. And I'm pretty sure mine is now broken, because when I put it into the lock position, so you push this button down, that locks this trigger, okay? And then you push the saw down until your pin area is sort of lined up, and there's this lever right here that you turn. Now mine's turning further than it ever has, and my blade is not locking in place. So I'm pretty sure I have forced something here and it just broke on the inside. I'm pretty disappointed that it did that. It makes no sense why it would do that, but the clicking, I'm pretty sure over the years I've damaged something in here and I don't know what. So changing blades is now a lot harder. I have to like take this plate off. I got to hold the blade with my palm and put the Allen key on it. If anyone's got any tips or tricks or anything like that, please let me know, because that's frustrating. The good thing is that I'm not changing this blade very often. I'm, like I said, primarily using this blade for decking, mainly because it's portable. I'm outside, so I'm not necessarily using a dust collector. It's just been really good. Now, Dewalt to me has an okay depth of adjustment knob. It's kind of cheap feeling. It works, you know, it just twists on, slides back and forth. It's not bad, but it is a little bit cheap feeling. This saw overall is a nice saw, but it's, you know, it's not nearly as nice as the Festool. And just to give you some idea, the Festool here cost $900 just for the saw. The Dewalt is, what was it? I paid $680, so $700 for this. And then the Makita is $600. And I actually got this for less than $600, but what was I gonna say? Oh yeah, this saw came with a track as well, whereas the Dewalt didn't come with the track, and neither did the Festool, and I had to buy the track separately. So the Makita is by far the best deal. They're always on sale in Calgary here. So just if you're thinking about a saw, Makita is always a good one to go for. All 3 of them have variable speeds on the top. Changes your RPMs for different types of product. And to adjust the bevel on this, it's the same as the Festool. It's just a knob on the front and the back. And then you can crank this over to 47 degrees, all the way down to 0. This does not go to -1. The, oh, I didn't mention on the Festool, but these have adjustments on them to kind of tighten this rail onto your track, okay? It kind of moves over these little pieces of plastic in here, snugs it up on your track so that you don't have any track slop. And that's a big deal with track saws. You don't want to be moving around on your track when you're actually doing a cut. The idea is to keep this thing nice and straight so that you're getting a really, really nice cut. Dust collector back here. The Dewalt is really, really well enclosed, so not a lot of dust comes out. And yeah, the Festools, they're all pretty much the same. The one thing that's different is the Festool does have this little piece right here that really helps keep the dust in. And then the battery goes on the back, of course, and that's about it for the Dewalt. So the Makita is very similar to the Festool. At least that's what a lot of people say. It's a really nice saw, especially for the price. On here, we can go to -1, and we can go to 48 degrees on this. So that's nice on the bevel. To change the blade on here, very, very simple. It locks in place over here. Just got to remember how to do it. I haven't actually used this saw in a long time. What am I doing? So that's what I'm doing wrong. So when you plunge it down, okay, you can lock it in place here with this little tab. I always forget about that little tab right there. And that little tab is how you get the blade down low, and then you can get out with your Allen key. And they do keep an Allen key in the handle. All of them keep it in the handle. All right. And then you just depress the safety trigger right here, and that's how you get it out.
Babe, sorry, I gotta interrupt you just for a minute here.
All right.
Because Shay
We got
is
some comments.
on fire. We have so many comments, and Shay is Team Red all the way.
Team Red. And I want to talk to Shay about that Milwaukee as well.
In the meantime, Shay is also on fire with the super chat. So thank you so much. Oh my goodness. And
super chat.
Yeah, it's crazy. Shay put in $10 at the beginning, but also
really?
$15 right now. And I just want to know, Shay, did you do that because Brad was talking about the Makita track saw? Because the super chat caption is obviously not a fan of DeWalt, and it came in right when you were talking about Makita. So I'm just wondering about the timing of
Well,
that.
thank you, Shay. Thank you.
But,
to each their own on their tools. I don't hold any bias or anything. I love all the tools out there.
No, Shay is Shay's not holding back. I would say there might even be a little bit of trash talk going on right now in the chat. Just trashing.
Let me hear some.
Well,
let me hear
okay,
some.
so Shay says, right at the beginning, sorry to hear you're on the DeWalt platform. I mean, you know.
I don't know if you look behind me, but there's a few. I got a few DeWalt tools.
I mean, there's a lot of, just kidding.
Yeah, I know.
And joking, but, and Shay's still talking about the track saw. Yeah, so there's a major Shay chat-a-thon going on here right now. But Craftman Greg's also here.
Hey, Craftman.
And we do have lots of people tuning in, so that's awesome. Oh,
cool.
And Daniel Arsenault is here, big DeWalt fan. And Craftman Greg says you owe him a super chat, so I think that's pretty funny. But he has the DeWalt track saw too, so like there's a big debate happening right now. Oh, and Conan Man's here.
Oh, right on. Hey, Conan Man. Yeah, I mean, I'll give you some thoughts. I guess the plunge on, everyone knows this, the plunge on the DeWalt track saw is different than the plunge on all the other saws. I need to show, we'll use this, I guess. If you're not familiar, you can kind of see how when, see, I'm having these problems again. Man. You're witnessing it right now. I'm having plunge saw problems. There's something sticking in this piece of, anyhow. See how the DeWalt track saw plunges forward? That's a totally different motion than pretty much 99% of the saws where they plunge, they rock down, okay? So side by side action here, rocks down. Let's go this way. You can see my motor rocking down, and then the Dewalt kind of goes forward. See, totally different motions. So you got to be aware that when you're cutting, that you're not cutting down into your wood. Let's say you're ripping a sheet. You want to start behind it, plunge down, and then go into it. That can kind of affect like chip out, tear out, and all that kind of stuff. So just be aware that if you are using the Dewalt, it's a little bit different. And yeah, I'm having some mechanical problems with it. It's really ticking me off. And I still love the saw. It's just, I'm frustrated, guys. I'm frustrated.
You know, this is interesting though, because Craftman Greg says straight up, every time I try Milwaukee tools, I end up returning it because of a manufacturing defect.
Yeah, Milwaukee's been having some problems lately. I don't know what's going on.
Well,
I don't know. I mean,
but
they
then-
all do, right?
Yeah.
They all have problems. I have had Dewalt tools that have had issues. I know Festool had some issues for a while. I mean, it's just stuff, right? It's manufactured by the thousands, and
But Shay is hardcore Team Red. He says, we'll turn you red.
he'll turn me red. So I want to talk about quickly, we'll touch on the Milwaukee track saw. So I looked into it a little bit, and as far as being a track saw, it's not a true track saw. Milwaukee hasn't developed one of these yet. All it is basically a track saw plate on one of their skill saws. So it's great. I think that should have been done years ago for all the different tools, because if you could just swap out a base plate or even clip on a track base plate onto any of these other skill saws or circular saws, it'd be a game changer, right? You wouldn't have to spend $1,000 on a track saw or $600 or whatever. Just go buy $100 plate and screw it on, and you're good to go. So yeah, Milwaukee still needs to make a proper track saw. Sorry, Shay. But it does look good for all the Milwaukee fans out there that are on that platform. It's a step in the right direction, but it definitely is not a Festool track saw. It's not something you're going to be doing fine finishing with by far.
Kona Man has a question.
Yeah.
He asks, are all three saw blades different for each track saw?
Yeah, and I'm going to get into that. That's something that I really struggled with in the beginning. I didn't know that when I first bought the Dewalt track saw. I found out when I bought the Festool, you know, you're at the store and you're like, okay, I need the Festool track saw. And then the guy's like, well, what kind of blade do you want? What are you cutting? Because there's like 4 different blades. I happen to have 3 of them right here. So they're all different thicknesses, and that makes a huge difference. You cannot put a regular blade in these because of the riving knife. Now, if you don't know what a riving knife is, that is this piece of metal behind the blade that prevents kickback when your wood pinches on the blade. So it's there to prevent the wood from pinching on your blade, and it rides right behind your blade. Now, each one of these is different. Festool is on a metric system, and even though my saw here, I've got it on the Imperial. You can buy metric or Imperial. Mine's on the Imperial measurements, but the blades are metric. And here are 3 different blades. This is why the Festool kills all these saws, is because of their blades. And let me tell you, it makes a huge difference. I have a cabinet saw or a saw stop table saw, the 5-horse, and I've bought extremely expensive blades for that thing for cutting laminate, or yeah, basically laminate is probably the best example. And you still get a little bit of tear out. Whereas when you use a track saw, especially the Festool, what happens is that track holds down, say, your good side, And then because of this little green piece right here, right, that's holding down the material, excuse me, right in front of your blade. So you don't get tear out. Doing all this, I don't talk all day and now I'm talking. So what happens is you can get tear out, essentially is what I'm saying. And you want to have, you know, a nice choice of blades. So they have 4 different blades, and I don't know, can you see this? Can you zoom in?
Sure. Maddie's mom says I just use a chainsaw sometimes. Does that make sense?
Yeah, chainsaws, can you see that?
Pretty close, yeah.
Okay. So there are 4 different blades, okay? And the way they number them are off these yellow codes. So I have these 3 codes right here. This one right here, the 305, that's extremely rough. So, you know, framing basically. But you can see, you know, this one's for Corian. They got different laminates, melamines, things like that. And basically when you're into this blade here, which is, or maybe it was this one. It's been a while. I think maybe no, this one here, you're looking at really, really fine finishing. And I was getting absolutely 0 tear out with these blades. Now, I think it was like $150 or something like that for that blade. But let me tell you, it was worth it. It made my cabinetry work look flawless as opposed to, you know, using my table saw where every once in a while, just the smallest tear out for me is unacceptable in some of the work that I'm doing. I can't afford to have little chips and stuff. So the Festool was a game changer for me. It allowed me to just cut whatever I want as long as I'm using the correct blade. So that's why I absolutely love this Festool saw. Now, another one that I know is a real big contender, and I don't have it, I've never used it, but all my research is telling me that Mafella is right up there, and their clean of cut is amazing, and it sounds like a really good saw, but I will just never buy it because I already have enough track saws here. Now, the reason I bought these 3 saws is they all work on the same track. And Festool came out with the track saw sort of first. They were one of the first. And let's do it this way. So we've got the Festool track right there, okay? Just slips right on. If I can just do this correctly. Sorry, guys. I'm working backwards here. Fits on there, no problem, okay? And so does the Makita, no problem. This one's not calibrated to this track right now, but it slides on there, no problem. And then the Dewalt also fits on here, no problem. So for me, having one track and 3 different saws is extremely ideal because I don't have to invest in all these different tracks. And you know, when I want to do like a super long cut on a deck and I don't want to have to you know, constantly move my track, you can connect the tracks together. I happen to own I think 4 or 5 Festool tracks, and they all do different things. Some of them are for like drilling holes and stuff in cabinetry, but you can connect them all together with these rods.
There's a lot of chat that we'll get to in a bit, but there's one comment here from Maddie's mom saying Festool tracks are junk.
Ooh.
And they deflect when connected. Does that?
Yeah, so you're finding deflection. I've never had the deflection. Very interesting. Very interesting. I haven't had deflection. I think, so like the Mafella and the Bosch have a really, they're the same track. They work together. And I haven't seen how they connect like in person. I know it's a bigger plate. And it's definitely something I've thought about with like doing fine finishing. You can buy longer Festool tracks that are like 10 or 12 feet long, but they cost $600 or something, $700. And for me, I'm a little worried about bending one, so I'm not going to buy it until I absolutely need it. Until then, I'll just connect my tracks together. But for me, the crappiest track out there is this Dewalt track. Tiffany's looking at all the chats.
No, I was coming in to say that Maddie's mom was saying that you need to buy the longer ones, the
Yeah.
longer tracks that are one piece. So sounds like great minds think alike there.
Yeah, yeah.
And she also said my hair was amazing and it's out of control, but I'm just gonna just glide away on that compliment.
Ooh.
Thank you.
Nice comment.
Thank you.
So yeah, for me, the Festool tracks are amazing. The longer ones, like you're saying, are better. The Dewalt track, now I think Dewalt's fixed this issue, but for me, I have like the first generation track, and here's something to note. Festool, if you push on it sideways like this, it doesn't move, okay? It really, really wants to stick down to its product, whereas the Dewalt moves very easily, okay? Here's the Festool, here's the Dewalt. So you can see a big difference. The reason I love the Festool is I don't have to clamp it. I never, ever, ever clamp my tracks unless I'm connecting multiple tracks and I'm doing an 8-foot rip or 12-foot rip. Then I'll throw a clamp in underneath and I'll be good. I'll be safe. You got a comment?
Yeah, well, all kinds of comments actually.
All right.
So
Track saws are hot.
Well, Shay, sorry about that. Excuse me. Shay is saying go with the Craig. Is that how you say that?
Yeah.
Craig. You can't go wrong, because that's what Shay uses for a track saw. He said
I
that
haven't
earlier.
tried the Craig track saw yet.
And
It looks good.
And Konaman says, what about the Makita 36 fault tracks? I heard they're as good or better than Festool.
So I will be honest, I don't know a lot about the Makita tracks. I have this track, which is,
You have one.
well, it came with the saw.
Of course you have one.
And I've never used it. Oh no, I have used it. I can tell I used it. Actually, I don't even think I used this. I think I lent this to my buddy. But
And then Shay says, we had a Johnson track and it's junk.
I don't even know what Johnson tracks are, so I'll agree with you. If I don't know it, it's junk. But here's the Makita track. Now, the one thing that Makita did that I think is really cool that none of the other saws here have is an anti-tip. I forgot to mention that. On the side here, there's a little slide that kicks out like that, and it has this little round disc. This disc fits into a little groove on the side of the track. So when you lock it in place and you slide that little lever over, when you want to do a bevel, okay, you bevel right over, it won't tip out, okay? So there we go. I can hold this up. See how it won't tip out? I can't do that with any of the other saws. So that's something that's pretty cool that Makita did, because a lot of times, you know, when you're cutting, you got to hold down with your left hand and push with your right to make sure that you don't tip that little bit. Because if you're cutting a 45 and you tip, you're done. You got to do it again, and that's no good. So yeah, I don't know about that other track that you're talking about. Maybe is that this one? I don't know.
Well,
This track moves too. It's not as good. This particular track is not as good as my Festool.
sorry, did you say the number on this one? Did you know it?
I don't. There's not a number on here.
I'm just asking because Jeremy Daigle
I got no number.
says he has the Makita 36 volt cordless
Oh yeah.
and their tracks, and he loves it. Cool.
Yeah. I mean, I was debating between the Makita cordless and this version when I bought this version, and I'm just not on that platform. I don't have any of the Makita chargers, so for me, I was just going to go with the corded version. Mainly because, like I said, I use this for cutting cement board and hardy board. It's tricky, guys, you know, figuring out which track saw to go with and what you're going to stick with. The one thing that Dewalt did that none of these tracks have, and mainly because Dewalt's smart. They have their own track, which has the guide down the center, but they also put in the slot to work on the Festool and the Makita tracks. So they were really, really smart, knowing that a lot of people probably already have the Festool because it was out way, way before the Dewalt. And just having a cordless version is key, right? Everyone wants to go cordless, and when they're offering this, it's what made me say, yeah, you know, I want to buy it because I can use it on my Festool track. Now, I did buy the Dewalt track as well, and I regret it. I guess if I'm going to make a regret video, we were talking about doing a video of tools I regret buying. Well, this is probably number one, because number one, it doesn't stick down to the surface. It slides around. And that's the main reason. But the one thing, my point was, I guess, you can cut on either side. And I don't know if you know this, I'm sure some of you do. When you cut on an angle, on a bevel with your saw, it will cut more of your guide, of this little plastic guide that is replaceable. So with Dewalt, you can have 45-degree cuts on one side and then your 90-degree cuts on the other side. So that's why Dewalt's kind of, you know, really good that way. They thought about that option. For me, I just have a track that I only use for angled cuts. I rarely use my track saw for 45s. I can't even remember the last time I cut a 45 with my track saw. But I do have a track just for that, so I'm not confusing and I'm not using the wrong gauge. You know, when you're lining up and you're cutting on a 90, you don't want to cut too much or not enough because your rubber guide is smaller than it should be. So something to think about there. So Tiffany's got something to say.
Well, okay, I'm starting to clue into Conaman's jokes because he said good day, capital A, and I never say A ever, so I didn't even get it. But
I say
yeah,
A.
we were talking about hosers last time, of course, with the hose video. So yeah, good day, A.
Good day.
But there's a lot of chat going on here. So Scorched Earth is here.
Hey, Scorched Earth.
And this is, I think this is interesting. I wonder what you'll say.
Okay.
He says, what's cool with track saws is cutting a door without taking it off the hinge.
Yeah.
Not that I've ever done it, but I know it can be done.
It can be. Maybe I can do, can I do a mock-up of that? I don't know if I can.
Okay, I'll get behind the camera.
Okay. For you, for the people that don't know, track saws, yeah, if you have to cut down a door, the one nice thing about track saws is they have almost a zero, not zero, but they cut very close to the edge. And I know there's a new one out there. It escapes me which one, but it cuts so close to the edge that it's really good for like hardwood installers. But yeah, Festool's clamps are amazing. So I'm gonna try and set this up as an example, okay? Let's say this is a door and it's mounted and you don't want to take the time to take it off because it's a solid core door, it's 8 feet high, it weighs 250 pounds, and it's worth like $1,000, okay? Now, let's say your hardwood installer needs it cut down because someone screwed up on a measurement and your door is just too low and it's gonna rub. Or let's say your carpet pile is too high and this is rubbing. So what you do is you take your track, all right? Now bear with me here, guys. And you slide your clamps on the back like this, okay? And then you do it on this side as well. And then, let's just say I need to cut that much off. I clamp it to the back of the door. Just like that. So now I'm clamped to the door. Then I can take my track saw and I can use this one if I want or another one, and I can cut the bottom of the door right off. No tear out, no chipping, nothing. And I can just pull my track right off. And I'm done. I got a nice clean cut door that's going to work on the carpet or the hardwood or whatever. So that's how you do it. Very, very easy. You saw how quickly I could do it with like one hand. Yeah, it's such an amazing tool to have.
Dale Bishop asks, have you ever tried a True Track, which is a... Oh, wait. Before we get to Dale's question, I guess Scorched Earth is saying, as a window and door guy, that was the only reason I wanted a track saw. Brad's right. Doors are heavy, and if the floor changes, it can save time and energy using a track saw.
Yeah.
It's a pretty cool trick.
And also, it's not just time and energy, too. Anytime you handle something, especially in a finished home, there's liability. There's the small chance you might dent the floor.
Yeah.
I mean, these heavy doors, you can dent a floor like that. And I'm sure you know, Scorched Earth, if you've dealt with doors and floors and all that jazz, is really, really easy. So the ability to not have to take it off the hinges at all and just do your cut not only saves like drywall, floors, potential chipping off the corner of the door. You know, you got to grab it, you got to rock it down. Those big 8-foot doors, you need two guys. Like, forget about it. Just use a track saw.
Yeah, doors can be so expensive too.
Yeah, I've installed some serious doors in my time, and this, you know, I wish I had this back in the day when I was doing some really expensive doors, because there was a basement where they were just all jammed up, and I had to take them all off. I think there's probably over 10, and cut them all down, and you got to tape it.
10.
And yeah, you got to tape it and deal with it and set it up on like garbage cans or whatever. It was just a mess.
Coda Man says, stop bringing back memories of those doors. I used to have to deliver them to job sites.
Oh yeah.
And the fire rated doors are even heavier.
Yeah, they are. They are. I've dealt with those too.
Little PTSD on the doors here.
Especially commercial steel fire rated doors. No, thank you. I don't really do commercial, but I worked at the college here years ago, and yeah, no, thank you. Just don't want to do it.
All right. Okay, so let's get to Dale's question now.
Sure.
He says, have you ever tried a True Track, which is a universal track, and use your own circular saw? He loves it.
I haven't. I've seen it a little bit, not in person. And I think it's great. If you can use a regular skill saw and you can hook up these sort of modified things, why not? I mean, the only difference is you're not going to get as good of a cut because of the fact that these tracks have these really tight rubber pieces. The Festool has that chip out guide. So right here, when you're in the track, you adjust this piece right here down to your material, and that alone, you wouldn't think it, but that alone prevents tear out on the other side. So, you know, it really depends on what you need your tool for. I mean, this saw is stupidly expensive for a saw. It's $900 Canadian. If I wasn't doing finishing, I wouldn't buy the Festool at all. I'd probably just buy the Dewalt, or probably like a cordless Makita or something like that if I was just into like framing and screwing around and stuff. But some of my finishing jobs are so expensive, I have to have the best.
So Dale says True Track has great rubber pieces, so it takes care of all that.
Okay. Well, I'll have to get one and try it out. Definitely.
Oh,
I'm very
boy.
curious.
How many babe, you only have
I'll have
three,
to
right?
borrow one. Yeah, I only have 3.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll have to borrow one and try it out.
Yeah. So people are still talking about doors. Uh, Conan says if he's cutting the bottom of a door, he'll still tape it. And
Okay.
yeah, Shay just says it's painful pulling doors.
Yeah, pulling doors sucks. Installing doors sucks. I don't like doors, guys. You know, it sounds like the rest of you don't either.
Yeah.
Especially installing 8-foot doors. I mean, it does not take much to get them out of whack because they're so heavy. So you really got to make sure you know what you're doing when you're attaching your jambs and all that.
What were you threatening to do earlier with your vacuum cleaner? That's
Oh,
every time I
I'm
walk
supposed
back
to
and
cut
forth,
something here, right?
I'm tripping over this thing, and you wouldn't move it because you said you were gonna.
I'm gonna cut something.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's let people know if once we turn this stuff on, sometimes the mic cuts a little bit.
It'll get
So
scratchy.
there's probably nothing wrong with your audio. It's just while the tool's on, sometimes it cuts out a bit.
Yeah.
From the vibration.
Yeah. So I don't know. Let's do the Festool. Yeah, I think I've pretty much covered what I wanted to with that other stuff. So here's a tip. This is a Festool table, and as you can see, maybe I've got a cut kind of over here. These tables are so expensive. They're $1,000 each. You can replace the tops. I've got the router bit that can make all these holes, and I could template it and build another one, no problem. But it's just something I don't want to have to do. So a little tip, if you are on a job site or even in your shop and you got a track saw, if you really want to prolong the life of your blade, don't cut your material on something hard like MDF or particle core or plywood or whatever. What you want to do is get yourself a table and then get yourself some rigid styrofoam. Just some 1-inch will be fine. Lay that down. If you're doing a new job or whatever, you can get a new sheet because you know this stuff will pick up rocks and things like that over time, especially if you're chucking in the back of your truck. But cutting through the foam, it doesn't hurt the blade at all, and it's just a really easy, nice way to have a clean tabletop where you can do all kinds of cuts. You're not worried about hurting your actual table. So I'm sure a lot of you guys out there that have track saws know this, but this is sort of my go-to. I just have foam around and I grab it and I use it. You can always get thicker foam, so you don't have to have a table underneath. You could just set up sawhorses and put up some 2 or 3 inch foam and then cut right on that. That's an option. Let's just do a quick cut. Here's what saw do you guys want to see? The Dewalt, the Festool, or the Makita track saw? Let's get a vote.
Okay, well, you're going to have to talk for a few seconds to let that vote come in.
All right, I am going to use my Festool track.
I've got a question for you, though, from Jeremy Daigle.
Yeah.
He asks, what makes the $900 Festool so much better than Makita?
It's Festool. No. So, I mean, pretty much anything Festool that I own, and I do own a lot of Festool, it is just a whole different level of quality. You really notice it if you start using the tools more and more and more, like the Domino. I have like a trim router, even the regular router, the 1410, I think it's called. Those tools, like the quality is just way up there. And for me too, the blades that Festool's making, they are amazing. Like I get 0 tear out with the right blade, you know, paired with whatever material that I'm using. So that for me is the big game changer. As far as the functionality of the tool, yeah, it's a saw. It cuts. Some of them have very, very small deflection in them, okay? So let's say you're cutting some solid stock, like 1.5 inch, oak, or cherry, or whatever. And you know when you run it through a table saw and you get those blade marks on the side, then you got to go through and sand it all down. The Festool is number one. The Mafella is probably better than it, but besides that, Festool is number one as far as the cleanliness of the cut. The fact that you don't have to go back and sand a whole bunch. The Dewalt by far is the worst for cleanliness of cut. That's why I only use it for decks, some MDF work, you know, definitely framing, but I'm never pulling my Dewalt out for any kind of fine finishing because it does leave a decent saw mark. It would be like pulling out, you know, my table saw, my Dewalt table saw or my Bosch table saw. It's just not perfect. So something to do with the mechanics inside, the way you can dial in the saw on the track, all that combined makes the Festool just a superior saw to all of them, really. And that's why you're paying the $900, because if you really care about that cut, that's what you got to pay.
Well, we've had absolutely 0 votes on which track saw to use.
Okay.
So I vote for the Festool since you
Since I've been
so much time
talking about it.
Yeah.
Sure.
So I'll vote.
All right. So, yeah. When you're cutting, this is always a little harder to do on camera because I can't quite see what I'm doing here. So you just want to run that blade just a hair below your wood. You don't want to have it all the way down. It's just not good practice. So just trying to get dialed in here.
Scorched says use the tool you like best. It's your live stream.
It's my live stream. Well, we'll go with Festool. It's here. I don't know what blade I have in there. So as far as cleanness of cut, I think this blade might have been using on a hardwood deck, on a Batu deck. I know I do say that I always use Dewalt for my decking, but I did use this for a Batu hardwood deck because Batu, as you guys probably know, is stupid expensive. It's literally like laying hardwood flooring on a deck. So I did use this. But one other thing that's awesome, my Festool hose. If you guys tuned in last live, it was all about hoses, vacuum hoses. This will fit on all 3 of these saws. It twist locks into the Festool because it's designed for it, but the Dewalt, it just presses right in there, no problem. And it does the same on the Makita, no problem. So we just hook the hose up, lock her in place, and then unfortunately it's corded, so this just twist locks in as well. Like so, it's a quarter turn. One thing I will say, where they put the plug on the Festool is annoying for me. I have a hard time getting my fingers under there. I have kind of big hands, and yeah, it is annoying for me. So yeah, I've got this hooked up to my vacuum. It's on auto. So when I turn this on, should turn on my vacuum. Yeah, okay. So we'll just do a quick cut here. You want to have, here's a tip. I know this is a small piece of wood, but anytime you're cutting, always have your track a little bit over the edge of the wood. Something like, you know, 4 to 6 inches past. That way when you come down behind it, and then you go into the wood. You don't come into your wood unless you're doing a plunge cut, but you don't come down onto your wood, you come in from behind it. All right. So nothing fancy here, I'm just cutting a piece of wood. right. So there we go. Beautiful cut. You can see how easy it is. And then my tear out is 0. Okay. And then underneath, obviously, is always 0 because it cuts up. So, you know, the beautiful thing about track saws are if I've got to cut on a weird angle, you can do it. You don't need to cut straight every time. You can cut like this. I mean, I can't run a piece of wood through my table saw at this angle without freehanding it or using some sort of sled jig, right? Whereas this, I just throw it down, make my cut, and I'm done before I even come close to pulling out my sled.
Would you consider doing the Makita cut too?
Sure.
Just because Shay got in a vote
Oh,
way later.
all right,
Yeah,
we'll do
there was a
Makita.
big delay.
We'll do the Makita.
And then Shay is also saying, wait, a $900 saw has a bad vacuum port? I don't believe it. Yeah, there's always something, right? I mean, it just seems like no tool is ever perfect.
Well, the vacuum port on the Festool is really good.
Well, maybe...
You don't like it, Shay?
Maybe Shay thought you were talking about the vacuum port when you were talking about the plug.
Oh, yeah, sorry. Maybe I misspoke. I don't know. I'm rambling too. I'm talking about the plug. Like on the back, I'll show you here what I'm talking about.
Okay, I better get it there.
So right here, where this plug goes, see my fingers getting underneath this to unlock it. Sometimes, see, I just rack my finger right there. It's just, for me, I find it's a little bit, just a little bit hard. You kind of have to get your fingers in there. It's just a pain in the butt.
Yeah, Shay was talking about the plug.
Yeah, so, you know, it is what it is, I guess. I typically, when I'm set up, I'm not pulling this plug out. I'll have my tools all plugged up and, you know, have it all connected to my vacuum and away I go.
Yeah, and you know, Codaman is saying, is it the track saw or is it the blades that do the work? Because you can't
It's
have
both.
one without the other.
Yeah, it's both. It's both. 100% it's both. So, like I was saying earlier, all these saws have different thicknesses of blade. And so I can't use a Festool blade on my Dewalt saw and vice versa. It just doesn't work. The reason I love the Festool is because they have 4 different blades for doing all kinds of work. Dewalt, this is the only blade I can find. Now, maybe it's different now, but I just bought this blade, I don't know, mid last year. And I had to get it online on Amazon. I think we have a link for it, maybe. I don't know. But, like, good luck finding this in a store anywhere. You're just not gonna. So, this blade here is a 48 tooth carbide blade. Compared to some of these, does it even have the teeth? It doesn't, but Festool has 4 different blades that really are the best blades I've ever used in my life. So the Dewalt, unless they come out with some better blades, that's a negative for the Dewalt. Now the Makita, I haven't really looked too far into their choice of blades and how many they have, mainly because I only use that for concrete. But the saw too, you know, how dialed in is that motor? The spinning of the blade, is there any wobble, anything like that? How well does that saw mount on the track? Is there any slop? That's typically human error. All those things will determine your, you know, quality of cut, essentially. Let's do this guy. I haven't used this for a while. So.
Well, it's good that you're doing the Makita because Dale Birmingham is looking to get a track saw and he's leaning towards Makita. So I think it's good that you're doing.
Let's give Makita a whirl. A lot of people compare the Makita to the Festool. I'm not sure why. It's very, very easy to use. This saw, I've never had an issue with it. There's not a lot to it. Makita's always been a solid brand. It's just, and it's cheap, right? Like, a lot of guys get into, and I'm guilty of it, just buying tools because they're awesome and they're new and they're cool. But really, you know, the tool is there to make you money and not to drain your bank account. So that's why the Makita is nice. It's not gonna kill you, right? Just adjust this blade here. So pretty easy to adjust. Quickest way is just to kind of sight it. But yeah, I'm set at, this is in metric too, by the way. I'm at 26 mil. All right. So here we go. Well, put on my safety glasses. Let's take a look at the cut. So not bad. Tear out, you're not gonna be able to see this on camera, but there is tear out on this. This could be because this blade, this blade is brand new. I've never used this blade. I lent this to a buddy. No, the blade's still good. This is a 48 tooth blade. Not as many, or no, this blade's not near as good as the Festool blade that I've got in. So that's probably it. But you know, the Makita is a really good saw. Just look into the blades. This is a Hitachi fiber cement blade that works in the Makita. And this is 0.71 of an inch thick, okay? And this is a fairly thin curved blade. So that's another thing to keep in mind when you're looking at track saws, the blade thickness. Now the Dewalt is, oh, I read it earlier. It's a little thicker, I believe. Yeah, 0.86. So a little bit thicker than the Makitas. So with that, you get a little bit of deflection, all right? And then the Festool, theirs is in metric. It's they say 2.2 millimeters. But these blades, let me tell you, they are thick blades, all right? Like, they are thick. There's a substantial difference between, not twice as thick, but, you know, 30% more, 40% more. There's a big difference. These Festool blades are really, really solid. You are not going to get any deflection with these, okay? And they're a lot smaller too. So that's part of it. Smaller blade, you know, less deflection than a big blade. So it really depends on what you're gonna primarily use your saw for, in my point of view. That's why I ended up with 3 saws. It's ridiculous. There's like almost, you know, well, with all my tracks, there's over $3,000 here in track saws. It's kind of crazy. That's the vacation. We could have gone on a vacation, but I had to have track saws.
Well, that reminds me of a comment. I don't know if Maddie's mom is still here, but I think it's a she because it's Maddie's mom. If it's the mom using the
Yeah.
Anyhow, she wanted to know our address and wanted to know about our security for your workshop. And
Oh.
yeah.
Well,
I think, yeah.
just so you know, the workshop is not on our property, and it is so secure that I'll know, and so will the police, believe me.
Spread the word.
Yeah, this place is locked down. There's nothing's happening here without me knowing about it.
Yeah.
So
don't know if Maddie's mom is still here. But you know what, babe? It's been an hour. So
Whoa.
final questions.
Yeah, any questions, guys? Hours go by quick. I find lives, I don't know, when I do a tool review, they're typically like 8 to 15 minutes. And then when I'm doing a live, I don't know where I'm getting all this random blabber from, but yeah. If you have any questions, now's the time about anything.
But we love talking to you guys.
Yeah.
It's so cool to see the comments and questions and hear the input on some things.
For
You
sure.
might not have known. I know a while back in the chat, the doors was still a hot topic. There were a couple of comments. Scorched Earth was saying for new construction for commercial windows and doors, for offices, the doors were so heavy and 10 feet tall, fire rated, extra heavy.
Yeah.
And the floor wasn't installed, so I guess he had to do a ton of trimming there, sounds like.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's really interesting that Shay, I think this is really interesting. Shay says, I hate them, but it's 35% of our business.
Ooh,
That's a lot of doors.
that's a huge part of your business.
Shay, what's your focus? That's a lot
Well,
of doors.
I would say
places with
finishing.
multifamily.
Well, no, if it's 35% of your business, you know, if you're a finishing company, doors, trim, base case, closets, mantles, archways, you know, that's typically a finishing crew that will come in and do all that. So
Yeah.
that's what I started doing was finishing when I first got into this 20 years ago. It was baseboard and casing, and then I got into doors, and we had to pre-hang all our own doors, so we weren't buying the pre-hung, which is what I buy now because it's just a huge time saver.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Interesting.
doors.
Yeah. So, and Dale asks, other than the Festool, what track saw would you recommend?
I would go with Makita. Makita to me is better than the Dewalt. The Dewalt's been disappointing to me as far as this clicking noise that I've had, and I think I broke the blade lock. I'm all about cordless. Now, if a corded and cordless is like $300, maybe it's not worth it. Really depends on how much you're going to use the saw. But yeah, Makita is definitely a really good bang for your buck. I'm kind of always recommending this saw just because it gets the job done. It provides me with a better cut than the DeWalt, and I can fit other blades in the Makita as opposed to these two saws here. So something to think about is, you know, how much money are you investing in blades? What are you cutting?
Well, we just got another little down payment towards a blade. Thank you, Shay.
Oh, right on. Thanks, Shay.
So, what that this means nothing to me, but it's probably going to mean everything to you. Finishing.
Yeah,
AZEK,
finishing crown and decks. Yeah, so you're getting into all the good stuff. Yeah, well, crown work can be tricky, especially on old homes. It's nothing worse than doing crown work on an old house.
Yeah.
That's like cornice work, crown work up along
Uh-huh.
the ceiling there.
That's a lot of work.
That's what they made DAP for. Thank you so much. Your donations are
Yeah.
so,
It's so
just-
cool.
yeah, just thank you.
Oh, I'm gonna have to get the super board. I gotta
Oh,
figure it
super-
out.
super
But
chat.
but in the meantime, I want to tell you there's a lot of. Oh, Shay says cock it. But there's
Cock
some
it.
other comments
great
here
job.
from the Diablo blade and those.
Oh, Dale. Yeah, thanks, Dale. Appreciate that. Yeah, we've been doing this for quite a while now, I think a couple of years. And we plan on doing a lot more videos, and I think we're going to try and do live minimum once a week, hopefully twice a week, just because we like the interaction. We're really trying to build up our following on YouTube, and you know, just trying to give you guys as much knowledge that I have as possible. Plus, we're doing a little tiny home on the side. I know we haven't posted a video on that for a long time. It's basically a trailer that we're converting into like a tiny home, but a little bit different than your average tiny home. It's not like a full-on camper. It's more like our getaway ski chalet. It's mini something place to watch James Bond movies,
And
right?
I would just like to say that I'm really looking forward to getting it done.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we've had horrible weather, so working outside in the trailer is just not ideal.
All right. Shay's up on the super board.
Super bud.
This is our official super board. Thank you.
Right on.
Shay. Hopefully that's in the shot there. And What's going on there in the chat, babe?
Yeah, Kona Man says $30 a foot. Yeah, that's expensive for Crown.
Woo. Yeah.
I used to install that
But
plaster.
that I think he's saying that was in the 80s though. So in the
That's
80s, a
expensive.
company I worked for was
That's
like-
installed. That's not just the
Okay.
product. That's installed.
all right. Yeah, because if that was the price in the 80s, what would it be now?
I bet it. I don't know. It might. I don't go by linear footage when I'm doing that stuff. It's. It might even be cheaper now because the 80s they didn't have the tools that we have these days. So, I mean, people slap that stuff up way quicker now.
And Jeremy says he did 2 oak staircases with just a couple sharpenings.
Ah, okay. Yeah, I have yet to sharpen my blades. And a lot of the times you just got to clean it, right? It gets all that residue on it, and a lot of people don't know. Just clean your blades, and then they're brand new. Or you take them to get sharpened if you've used them a lot. So
Interesting.
yeah,
Okay, well, I think, oh, yeah, yeah,
yeah,
Jeremy's like, I think he's agreeing with you. Okay.
right on.
Shay says, it's a bid now. I'd punch a bag? What does that mean?
I don't know. Punch away.
Shay, what do you mean? Oh, TNT Gaming. We haven't heard from TNT yet. Speaking of molding, I've been looking at the Dewalt 20-volt sliding miter saw. Have you used it, and what are your thoughts on it?
The Dewalt 20-volt sliding miter saw. I'm assuming you're talking about this one right here? Or are you talking about the flex volt? Because that's not 20 volt, that's flex volt, the big one. This saw is the 20 volt. We can talk about the saw for a sec, yeah? We should do a chop saw live. This is the Dewalt 20 volt. And let me tell you, this is the only chop saw I've been using for like a year straight. I didn't even pull out my Bosch Glide miter saw. I also have, and that's a 12-inch. I also have a 12-inch Bosch on the rails, the one before the Glide. And then I've got like a 12-inch chop Dewalt. This is such a great saw. It's not, I wouldn't do crown molding with it, cornice work, but you can do baseboard. You could easily do casing on this. I don't. I do all my real finishing work with my Bosch just because it's more accurate. There's less deflection. But I used this saw last year for building decks and fences, and it was perfect because I didn't want to pull a trailer. I was only using my truck, and I was able to just easily move this around. Like, this is so light. So I'm not breaking my back every day setting this thing up. I can move it around the job site a whole bunch. It uses a shadow line to cut with this thing. Very, very handy. I did break the handle. So that's something to note. I'm probably going to tear this handle off and fix it somehow. I don't know, or order a new one, but the screw broke through the plastic. Keep in mind, I've had this saw now for a real long time, like years and years. So it's had a lot of use. Dust collection on it is meh. I usually stick a vacuum on here. That way I'm not kind of making a mess all over someone's lawn. It only bevels one way. And the back fence on this is pretty small. So those are some things that aren't the greatest about the saw. But for me, you know, I did put off buying this for maybe 2 years when it first came out. And then finally when I bought it, I don't regret buying this thing one bit. If you're on the Milwaukee platform, the Milwaukee by far is better than the Dewalt, by far. It's got a better excuse me, better base, better fence. It bevels both ways. It's just a better saw, and I should buy it.
Okay, I feel like this is when I come in and sort of try to, you know, we're doing a live video about your tools, and now you're talking about buying new tools.
Yeah,
I don't even know what to say.
I'm buying tools for the channel, right, guys? You know, to
Right.
provide you with solid information.
Okay. I think it's time to wrap this up. I think it's time to wrap this up.
Yeah. Well, thank you very
yeah.
much. It's been awesome again. Thank you all for tuning in and all the comments. We love it. You know, we're.
Shay's pumped because it sounds like you were just going Team Red. I don't know.
Ooh,
When's
I
the-
was a little bit there. I know.
I didn't even hear it because I just saw red with the idea of you buying a new tool. I stopped hearing. It was like airplane roar in my head.
It was, but I like tools.
All right, guys. Thank you so much.
Thank you
This has
so
been
much.
So much fun.
We'll be back on Friday.
Yeah.
We're not sure what we're going to review. If you want to leave some comments down below, what you'd like to see, maybe we can do that. But yeah, we'll think of something to do a quick little review or comparison or how to or something like that. We'll come up with something. But yeah, thanks again, guys. Keep on crushing it. We'll catch you later.